The talisman armament emanated a strange fluctuation while talisman markings flowed around it, and it ceaselessly absorbed the energy of the golden spear of domination. According to Xianxia's deduction, if it continued according to this speed, then it would at least take 5 years of time to completely absorb the energy within the golden spear of domination. Swish! Xianxia paid no further attention to this. With a command in his heart, the divine fate Tao ruler floated into appearance. A rain of brilliant and divine light descended, and it emanated a gorgeous glow and surged with auspicious qi. In next to no time, the rain of light interweaved together and condensed at the center of the jade ruler to form a dazzling little person. The little person sat cross-legged there and chanted scriptures of the Tao in a solemn manner. In an instant, Xianxia was able to clearly sense the energy of the Grand Tao, and the entire world had become different. The Grand Tao was without name or shape. It was hidden within all things in the world, yet it was illusory and difficult to comprehend. However, through the divine fate Tao ruler, Xianxia was able to clearly notice the marks of the Grand Tao, and he was able to comprehend their profundities even more thoroughly. The little person at the center of the ruler was the divine that could deduce the heaven Tao and transform the untraceable into traceable. On the other hand, Xianxia was able to act together with it and seem as if he'd fused with the heavens, earth, and the Grand Tao. This made his comprehension even easier, deeper, and thorough than it had been in the past. It felt like everything complicated and modeled had become simple and clean. It made all profundities and obscurities unable to hide, and they were clearly and fully revealed before him. This was the profound effect of the divine fate Tao ruler. It could deduce the Grand Tao and reveal its profundities. Even though it wasn't a combat-type treasure, merely this ability alone was something that other divine artifacts couldn't compare to at all. It could be said to be an unprecedentedly precious treasure. From this day onward, Xianxia fell into deep meditation, and he recuperated while he comprehended the Grand Tao in meditation while time swiftly flowed by without him noticing it. The years later, merely 3 days had passed for the outside world. On this day, Xianxia had suddenly opened his eyes from his meditative state, and at practically the exact same moment, Hui Kongzi's voice resounded within the ancient springtime realm. 3 days have passed. All of you can leave now. At this moment, it wasn't just Xianxia who'd awakened. The other disciples within the ancient springtime realm had woken successively from their meditative states as well. After that, numerous doors appeared in front of them. This day has finally come. Xianxia stood up and didn't hesitate at all to stride through the door, and he instantly vanished on the spot. The Square of Vi. When Xianxia arrived here, the other 29 disciples arrived successively as well. However, it wasn't Hui Kongzi that was waiting for them, and it was a thin, short, and extremely ordinary old man. Surprisingly, it was the Tao Institute's Dean Lu Xinji. Xianxia and the others were instantly shocked, and their expressions became solemn. Presently, the passageway to the forgotten grounds of chaos has been opened, so come with me. Lu Xinji glanced at Xianxia and the others before he immediately determined that their cultivations had recovered to their peak state. So, he immediately stopped hesitating and waved his sleeve lightly. In an instant, Xianxia and the others felt the scene before their eyes flash, and then they were uncontrollably enveloped by a copious and irresistible force before they swiftly vanished on the spot. They couldn't see or hear anything. It was like they were sinking through time, yet it seemed like a mere instant as well. When Xianxia opened his eyes once more, he immediately noticed that he'd arrived at an extremely unfamiliar region. This region was extremely silent, vast, deep, and seemingly boundless. Unlike other regions, the stars here were motionless on the spot, and it seemed extremely strange. On the other hand, an extremely enormous black-colored vortex surprisingly laid across the starry sky very far away in the distance ahead. When looked at from afar, it was like a bloody mouth that could devour a myriad of stars. However, the strange thing was that the enormous black vortex had fallen into a motionless state now as well, and it seemed extremely terrifying. This is Chaos Region. Lu Xinji had his hands behind his back as he stood in front of them, and he spoke indifferently while gazing at the enormous black vortex in the distance. Xianxia and the others were stunned. This is Chaos region? Why doesn't it show any signs of chaos at all? And it seems terrifyingly silent instead. This place is very dangerous. In the past, even Dao Lords wouldn't dare step foot here at all. Lu Xinji sighed with emotion. It's all thanks to the cooperation between the 5 extremes and the ultimate treasures of our respective sects that the tribulation energy here was suppressed, causing the chaos here to return to calm. Only now did Chun Shi and the others come to an understanding. They were clearly aware that the scene they were looking at now wasn't the true appearance of this region anymore. At the same time, it caused them to take this expedition even more seriously. Merely opening up a path towards the forgotten grounds of chaos required the joint forces of the 5 extremes of the Imperial region. This clearly showed how dangerous this place was in the past. It was simply like a supreme forbidden area. See that passageway? Lu Xinji pointed at the enormous black-colored vortex in the distance as he said, "You'll be able to arrive at the forgotten grounds of chaos by entering it. According to legend, there are many undiscovered regions scattered throughout it. At the same time, all sorts of danger and killing intent is hidden there as well. All of you must be careful as you explore it." At this moment, Chun Shi and the others revealed solemn expressions as they listened, and they didn't dare allow themselves to be distracted at all. They knew nothing about the mysterious forgotten grounds of chaos, so if they were able to obtain some guidance from a figure like Lu Xinji, then it would absolutely be beneficial to their exploration of it. Most importantly, all of you must be wary of the tribulation energy that restrains the Tao, and you must not allow even a trace of it to taint you. All of you've probably heard that the Rock Tao Lord had perished all those years ago because he'd been inflicted by the tribulation energy that restrained the Tao. When he spoke up to hear, Lu Xinji turned around to look at Chun Shi and the others before he said, "As for what other dangers lie within, even I'm unaware of the answer. All of you have to rely on yourselves to explore and deal with them." A strand of pressure instantly appeared within their hearts when they heard this. Since even the Dean of the Tao Institute had spoken in this manner, it clearly showed how mysterious and unknown the forgotten grounds of chaos was. The unknown usually represented danger. After all of you enter the forgotten grounds of chaos, this passageway will collapse completely. However, there's no need to worry. Our 5 sects will join forces once more 10 years from now, and will establish a path of return. Lai Xinji spoke solemnly. Remember, the time limit is 10 years, and it can be delayed by 3 years at most. If you're still unable to return then there's be no hope for you to return to the ancient god domain. Chun Shi and the others were shocked, and they committed this information to memory. There's no time to lose. All of you can set out now. Lu Xinji turned around, and then his gaze descended onto the enormous black vortex once more. "Let's go." Lung Xinghuan was the first to act. He led the other 5 disciples of the sovereign sect along with him as he flashed over, and he instantly vanished within the depths of the black vortex. After that, the other powers took action successively. They'd waited for too long for this opportunity to enter the forgotten grounds of chaos. So, even if it was filled with terrifying and unknown dangers, they refused to hesitate for the sake of establishing a new region and becoming a region lord. It was even to the extent that they were prepared to die. Perhaps people of the outside world would feel that it wasn't worth to pay such a huge price. However, in the opinions of all these cultivators that were about to enter the forgotten grounds of chaos, everything was worth it so long as the breakthrough in their cultivations that they obtained would surpass their predecessors. "Let's go." Chun Shi took a deep breath before he led Gu Yen and Tu Meng to flash towards the distance. At this point, all 30 disciples had vanished within the black vortex, and then Lu Xinji muttered, "I hope all of you'll be able to return safely." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve and left. Rumble. Not long after Lu Xinji left, the silence in this region was destroyed, and a strand of terrifying and violent chaotic force suddenly effused out. After that, the stars shook, space was in disorder, and boundless spatial flames, lightning, baleful mist, and rains of blood rumbled through the surroundings and enveloped the entire region. Once could even faintly hear the horrifying sounds of gods howling with sorrow and the grand Tao collapsing. Crack. Later on, The enormous black vortex rumbled and exploded into pieces amidst a loud crack, and then it transformed into nothingness. This region had fallen completely into chaos. It seemed like a terrifying energy of tribulation was caused all of this to occur from behind the scenes. Looks like they've already gone in. In the starry sky extremely far in the distance, Wuxia, Xueling, Su Tuo, Shenming, and Kaya stood there while looking towards the distance, and they clearly witnessed the scene of chaos in the distant region. Some little fellows will probably be unable to return this time. Su Tuo spoke indifferently. These words clearly referred to something. Wuxia was clearly aware of this, but he just grinned and said, "Fellow Taoist Su Tuo, are you worrying about the disciples of your sovereign sect?" The meaning behind his words was that Su Tuo was speaking about the disciples of the sovereign sect. Su Tuo grunted coldly, while his muddy eyes suddenly shot towards Wuxia, and he said coldly, "Wuxia, the Tao discussion has ended now while those 30 little fellows have entered the forgotten grounds of chaos. So, why don't we seize this opportunity to have a battle? My heart is truly unable to rest in peace without killing you." As he spoke, his voice couldn't help but contain a wisp of dense killing intent. The eyes of Shenming, Xueling, and Kaya focused when they heard this. If both of you fight and kill each other now, then who would bring those little fellows back 10 years from now? However, before Wuxia could answer, Lu Xinji's voice suddenly resounded, and he appeared out of thin air right after that. The corners of Su Tuo's lips twitched when he heard this, and he instantly went silent. Wuxia smiled and said, "Senior is right. It's really unsuitable to fight now." At that instant just now, it wasn't just Su Tuo's killing intent that was seething. Even Wuxia had aroused a trace of killing intent in his heart. However, all of this had vanished without a trace because of Lu Xinji's arrival. 10 years of time is like the blink of an eye. Why don't all of you rest here and prepare to act 10 years from now? I will be waiting here as well. Lu Xinji's words instantly caused Su Tuo and Wuxia to abandon all thoughts of fighting each other. They were clearly aware that Lu Xinji had definitely acted in this way in order to prevent a battle between them from occurring. Both of these Tao lords couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. Kill! When Xianxia had just opened his eyes, an extremely cold and indifferent voice resounded by his ear. It was like a thunderclap. In an instant, Xianxia's pupils dilated while his nerves tensed. He practically instinctively withdrew the talisman armament, and then executed the most formidable defensive move he possessed, the impeccable style. Rumble! 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 The sword barrier of the impeccable style had just formed when it suffered an extremely terrifying impact, and before it could even disperse the force from this impact, another attack had smashed down forcefully onto it. It was like raging waves that were beating against the shore. Each wave was stronger than the last, and the collision caused a myriad of strands of divine radiance to erupt while space was warped and crushed into powder amidst sharp rumbling. Pooh! Since he was caught off guard, Xianxia was actually forcefully struck to the point of coughing up blood and staggering back. He was almost unable to hold on. All of this had occurred too quickly. No one had imagined that they would suddenly suffer such an ambush right after they emerged from the passageway formed by the black vortex. The people lying in ambush had clearly been accumulating strength for some time, and they instantly took Xianxia by surprise. It was even to the extent that if he didn't possess ample experience in combat and had an extraordinary reaction time, merely this round of attacks would have been sufficient to annihilate him on the spot. Kill! A dazzling rain of light descended in the surroundings while attacks descended like a violent storm. Before these attacks could even descend, numerous terrifying attacks swarmed over from all directions once more. It was even to the extent that Xianxia wasn't even able to determine who his opponents were. Damn it! Xianxia's expression was gloomy to the extreme. His gaze was sharp like a bolt of lightning while he shouted loudly, and he practically utilized his entire strength as he swung the talisman armament to its limits. Bang! 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 Sounds of collisions that were dense like the rumbling of drums resounded incessantly. Every single one of these attacks were actually terrifying to the extreme and were executed with top-rate techniques in the world. Moreover, all of them were executed with natural spirit treasures that possessed shocking destructive might. Besides that, it was very obvious that his opponents were absolutely not just 2 or 3 people, and it was a group instead. Every single one of them possessed extremely formidable combat strengths, and they were peak geniuses in the universe enlightened ancestral god realm. Under such circumstances, even if Xianxia exerted all his strength, he was actually struck to the point of coughing up blood against. The vital blood within his entire body roiled, while his bones seemed as if they were about to fall apart. However, at this moment, he finally saw the appearance of his attackers clearly. Surprisingly, it was Leng Xinghuan, Donghuang Inxian, and the others from their respective sects. In other words, all the disciples of the Sovereign Sect and Divine Institute who had entered the Forgotten Grounds of Chaos had actually been lying in ambush here to launch an assassination against Xianxia. Kill! The icy cold and emotionless voice resounded once more. Xianxia was infuriated to the extreme. These damnable bastards! They're simply going too far by attacking as soon as we entered the Forgotten Grounds of Chaos. Indeed, even a figure like Xianxia had been taken by surprise by this sudden ambush, and he'd almost suffered calamity. He'd never imagined that something like this would occur. After all, under normal circumstances, the first reaction anyone had towards an unknown, mysterious, and dangerous place would be to investigate if they were in a dangerous situation. But it was very obvious that Leng Xinghuan, Donghuang Inxian, and their groups hadn't done that, and they acted to the contrary of this. They seized this opportunity to launch an ambush against Xianxia, and this was something that would have probably surprised anyone. However, it was clearly too late to figure out all of this now. Xianxia was in a dangerous situation, whereas Leng Xinghuan, Donghuang Inxian, and the others would definitely not let go of this opportunity to annihilate Xianxia. Rumble. All sorts of terrifying attacks covered the heavens and the earth as they descended down here, and it caused Xianxia to be only able to resist passively like a trapped beast that had fallen into a hopeless situation. Junior brother Tu Meng. Suddenly, a furious voice resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it caused Xianxia's heart to shake. He turned around and looked over, and he instantly noticed that Tu Meng had actually fallen into a tight encirclement. Moreover, Tu Meng's clothes were dyed red with blood and might perish at any moment. In an instant, a strand of indescribable rage seethed like lava throughout Xianxia's body, and it caused his eyes to turn blood red. These damnable bastards! Xianxia gritted his teeth as he suddenly withdrew a large blood-red bell. It droned as it soared into the air and shook incessantly. It was exactly the divine blood desolation bell. Explode! It was merely a single word, yet it made the divine blood desolation bell suddenly tremble before it rumbled and exploded into pieces, and an extremely terrifying blast of natural energy swept towards the surroundings. Shit! Avoid it quickly! A wave of shouts resounded in the distance. Xianxia seized this opportunity to flash towards Tu Meng's side, and then he grabbed Tu Meng before flashing towards the distance. Bang! However, right at this instant, a sharp and pitch-black blade appeared soundlessly and slashed forcefully towards Xianxia's back. The strike was truly too swift and sudden. It seemed as if it had been waiting here for a long time for Xianxia to make an appearance so that it could give Xianxia a lethal strike. Obviously, this person had accomplished his goal. This attack was swift to the point Xianxia was unable to dodge it, and it collided with Xianxia's back. Bang! However, unexpectedly, a layer of illusory light suddenly effused out from Xianxia's body, and it actually blocked this attack. Damn it! It's actually the spirit void garment. A shocked and furious voice resounded from afar. At this moment, Xianxia had relied on the force from this attack to charge out of the encirclement with Tu Meng and Gu Yan, and he teleported towards the distance at full speed. Pursue him! We must not allow him to escape no matter what! A wave of shouts resounded. How could Leng Xinghuan, Donghuang Inxian, and the others just watch as their prey fled? So they immediately flashed out in pursuit at full speed. Explode! However, right when they moved, a bronze halberd that was suffused with chaotic chi swept over, and it emanated surging and terrifying divine radiance. The natural spirit treasure. Globe halberd. That damnable bastard is playing the same trick again. How could Lung Xinghuan and the others who'd been tricked by Chun Shi on countless occasions be unaware that Chun Shi was going to detonate a natural spirit treasure again? As for whether he was just frightening them or not, none of them were able to determine it. However, with the experience they'd obtained from being tricked numerous times in the past, Lung Xinghuan and the others immediately decided to flash towards the side with the intention of going around the globe halberd. However, their guess was clearly wrong this time. The globe halberd had rumbled and exploded before they could even go around it. It was simply like a scorching sun had exploded into pieces, and it emanated terrifying waves of air that caused an area of 50,000 kilometers in the surroundings to transform into a burning ocean of fire. Shit! Damn it! In an instant, Lung Xinghuan and the others were caught off guard. They were in extremely embarrassing states as they dodged successively without end, and some even suffered some injuries from it. Such a delay instantly caused them to lose all traces of Chun Shi, and they'd missed the best opportunity to pursue Chun Shi. Dust and dirt suffused the surroundings. When everything returned to calm, Lung Xinghuan, Donghuang Yinxian, and the others had extremely gloomy and icy cold expressions. I never expected that damnable bastard would be able to escape again. All of them had livid expressions. Earlier, they were just a thread away from success. Yet who would have imagined that such an unexpected event would occur at the critical moment? Who would have imagined that Chun Shi would actually be so decisive and detonate 2 natural spirit treasures in a short period of time? They'd experienced such detonations on more than one occasion, but they were helpless against it every single time, and this caused them to feel aggrieved and furious in their hearts, especially Lung Xinghuan. Earlier, he'd seized the moment when Chen Shi went to rescue Tu Meng to successfully launch a surprise attack against Chen Shi. But unexpectedly, Chun Shi was actually wearing the Spirit Void garment, and it caused his attack to be unable to harm Chun Shi at all. If it wasn't for that, Chun Shi would have probably been split open by now, right? At this moment, Lung Xinghuan was simply speechless. Every single time he made a move against this fellow would be able to escape. Isn't his luck a bit too good? Now that he has fled, I wonder when we'll be able to find him again. It's truly a pity. After a short while, Donghuang Yinxian sighed while his voice carried a wisp of rage. For the sake of launching an ambush against Chun Shi, they hadn't even hesitated to join forces and attack with all their strength. They absolutely hadn't underestimated Chun Shi at all. It was even to the extent that, because they were clearly aware of how formidable Chun Shi's strength was, they'd struck quickly and forcefully as soon as they attacked. But in the end, they were still unable to succeed. It's fine. We'll be in the forgotten grounds of chaos for at least 3 to 5 years, and it might even go on for over 10 years of time. We'll definitely have the chance to encounter him again. Lung Xinghuan took a deep breath, forcefully restrained the grievance and anger in his heart, and then he said in a low voice, "The important matter at hand is to find new regions as soon as possible, and then refine and absorb the region energy within them. If we're able to advance into the Imperial Monarch realm as soon as possible, then it would be even better." Donghuang Yinxuan's eyes narrowed when he heard this, and he deeply agreed. If we're able to seize this opportunity to advance into the Imperial Monarch realm, then dealing with Chun Shi would naturally be nothing difficult. The expressions of the others eased up greatly as well, and they started thinking about what to do next in the forgotten grounds of chaos. But everyone must be careful. This is the forgotten grounds of chaos in the end, and it's extremely dangerous. No one is allowed to act arbitrarily without orders. Lung Xinghuan glanced at all of them as he reminded in a deep voice. Of course. All the others, including Donghuang Yinxian, agreed simultaneously. At such a moment, working together was absolutely safer than exploring alone. After all, according to Lu Xinji, even the Rock Dao Lord had suffered calamity here, so none of them dared to be careless. Lung Xinghuan immediately had a brief discussion with them before they left swiftly and flashed towards the distance. Not long after they left, a figure suddenly appeared on this desolate battlefield. He wore embroidered clothes, a marten coat, and a crown of feathers. He had an elegant bearing like that of a young marquis in the mortal world. Surprisingly, it was the disciple from the Golden Toad Isle, Wang Zhong. "Ha ha! Continue fighting. the fiercer the better. He swept the surroundings with his gaze before a wisp of a strange smile arose on the corners of his mouth. After that, he stretched his body, placed his hands behind his back, and then walked towards the distance. I never expected that I would be able to watch a show upon returning here this time. It's truly interesting. He had a relaxed expression as he walked within the forgotten grounds of chaos, and it was like he was strolling idly in his courtyard and didn't reveal even a trace of anxiety. It felt like he was a fist that had returned to the ocean or an eagle that had ascended once more into the sky. Wang Zhong seemed to be extremely familiar with this place. Before long, Wang Zhong's figure had vanished. I'll definitely see through you in 3 years. Suddenly, Jianan's figure had arrived at this desolate battlefield as well, and the place he stood just happened to be where Wang Zhong stood earlier. His gaze was deep as he looked towards the distance, and a wisp of resolution resided in the space between his brows on his tranquil and firm face. The forgotten grounds of chaos was huge, and it was unimaginably enormous. When Xianxia started fleeing with Gu Yan and Tu Meng, he finally noticed that this mysterious and unknown place he resided in was actually much vaster than any large world he'd seen in the past, and it was even to the extent that it was immeasurable. Xianxia was only able to determine according to time that if he were flying on the starry sky, then he would be able to pass numerous galaxies and travel through a vast universe in the time for an incense stick to burn. However, such a distance seemed to be nothing in the forgotten grounds of chaos. There seemed to be no sky here, and it was stars that filled the sky. They hung densely in the sky and emanated piercingly cold radiance. Just like the forgotten grounds of chaos, the starry sky was vast and seemingly without end as well. Unfortunately, Xianxia didn't have the time to carefully sense the situation, because it had truly been too dangerous all along the way here, and chaos was everywhere. Raging storms, erupting volcanoes, fragmented expanses of space, bloody mist that drifted like smoke. All along the way, he'd practically not noticed a single safe and quiet area. It was even to the extent that Xianxia frequently noticed numerous stars whistling down from the sky and smashing onto the ground. The opened-up craters that covered an area of 500,000 kilometers, and the terrifying impact from the crash caused Xianxia's heart to shudder with fear. In short, the heavens, the earth, and everything here was in a chaotic state while all sorts of dangers and natural disasters occurred at every single moment. With Xianxia's current strength, he still had no choice but to become tense and extremely careful as he faced this extremely adverse environment. Because while the disasters here seemed to be no different than the outside world, the might of it was extraordinarily huge. The storms here could easily tear a god into pieces. The lava here could instantly incinerate anything. The spatial rifts here could even instantly turn everything into powder. Besides all of this, there were extremely venomous miasma that could corrode the soul, baleful rays of light that could melt the essence, spirit, and energy. It was even to the extent that every single plant here could instantly become a lethal calamity that caused one to fall into eternal damnation. It was too terrifying. Since he'd started cultivating until now, Xianxia had experienced countless dangerous places, but they were instantly nothing when compared to the forgotten grounds of chaos that lay before him. Xianxia finally understood why practically no one had stepped foot here since the ancient times until now. Because the dangers here were sufficient to make no cultivator dare to come close. Even a figure like the Rock Dowlord had suffered calamity here, and this clearly showed how terrifying the forgotten grounds of chaos was. Perhaps it was exactly because of this that no one had established a region here, and it still hadn't been assimilated into the ancient god domain until now. In other words, the forgotten grounds of chaos could be described as being primitive, desolate, dangerous, and unfathomable. After a long time passed, Xianxia was finally barely able to find a place to stop. It was a completely barren and pitch-black mountain that rose 3 kilometers into the air, and it was completely suffused with strands of faint baleful qi. However, even though this baleful qi was formidable, it was unable to harm Xianxia. Tu Meng, how do you feel? Xianxia couldn't be bothered about his own injuries, and he looked at Tu Meng as soon as he descended to the ground. At this moment, Tu Meng was completely dyed red with blood, and a bloody hole that was the size of a bowl resided on the left of his chest. Blood was still gurgling from it, and it was a horrifying sight. All along the way, Tu Meng had been constantly gritting his teeth and enduring the pain throughout his body, and this had caused his countenance to seem rather pale while his body was in bad shape. However, when he heard Xianxia, he still forced a smile onto his face and said, "Martial ancestral uncle, I'm fine. I won't die. Don't worry about me." Xianxia frowned, and he recalled what they'd encountered earlier, causing him to almost lose control of the flames of rage in his heart. Those damnable bastards. I'll definitely make them pay 100-fold when I see them next. Xianxia gnashed his teeth while he hated them to the bone. Because his group had suffered their ambush after just entering the forgotten grounds of chaos, and if he hadn't rescued Tu Meng in time, then Tu Meng would have perished. How could Xianxia not be infuriated by this? Most importantly, now that Tu Meng was heavily injured, it would undoubtedly be equivalent to losing a strong companion during the next period of time, and this was absolutely not a good thing for them. Martial ancestral uncle is right. This is completely different from the Tao discussion now, and those old geezers aren't here. That was why those fellows from the Sovereign Sect and Divine Institute dared to launch an ambush against us. So, we don't have to hold back, and it's best if we're able to annihilate them. Gu Yan spoke coldly from the side while revealing a murderous aura. The ambush just now had taken him by surprise as well, and he truly felt aggrieved to the extreme when he thought about how heavily injured Tu Meng was. We naturally have to take revenge. But the important matter at hand is to first survive the forgotten grounds of chaos and strive to establish a region of our own as soon as possible. Xianxia took a deep breath, and he recovered his calm before he said swiftly, "For the sake of entering the forgotten grounds of chaos, Lung Xinghuan suppressed his cultivation for over 10,000 years. So now that they were unable to kill you, they would definitely choose to establish their regions as soon as possible and advance into the Imperial Monarch realm." Xianxia paused for a moment before he continued. "If such a situation really occurs, then it would be even more disadvantageous to us. So we must accomplish this before they can." As he finished speaking, a wisp of resolution arose in his voice. Gu Yan's expression became solemn and serious as well, and he said, "Martial ancestral uncle, then what should we do now?" Xianxia glanced at Tu Meng and said, "I have no choice but to inconvenience you to recuperate in the world within my body for now." Tu Meng grinned and said, "Being able to observe the universe within Martial ancestral uncle's body is everything I could wish for. How could it be an inconvenience?" Xianxia patted Tu Meng on the shoulder, and he didn't say anything before transporting Tu Meng into the universe within his body. Right at this moment, Gu Yan suddenly thought of something and said, "Martial ancestral uncle, do you think the fellow Taoists from Nuwas Dao Palace suffered an ambush as well?" Xianxia's eyes instantly narrowed when he heard this. He remained silent for a short while before he said, "No, we practically entered the forgotten grounds of chaos right after them. So, if the Sovereign Sect and Divine Institute had made a move against Nuwas Dao Palace, then they wouldn't have time to lay another ambush for us." Gu Yan thought for a moment before he agreed with Xianxia's opinion. "Come, let's set out." Xianxia glanced at the surroundings and observed it for a moment. In the end, he looked at the sky because if one wanted to grasp region energy, then one naturally had to take control of a region of stars. "Martial ancestral uncle, you are injured. Why don't you rest for a while before we set out?" Xianxia interrupted him before he could finish. "It's only a minor injury, and it doesn't affect anything. I can recover on the way." Gu Yan didn't continue persuading Xianxia when he heard this, and his figure flickered with Xianxia and teleported towards the distance. A region included numerous universes, and every single universe contained a myriad of stars, so it could be said to be boundlessly vast. For example, there were over 1,000 known regions in the ancient god domain. However, all of them had owners since a long time ago, and even if they seized the region by force, it wouldn't be of much use to Xianxia and the others. Because according to the goddess in Aramba Temple, the strongest region energy usually came from those regions that hadn't been in the possession of anyone else in the past. On the other hand, throughout the ancient god domain, such new regions to establish could only be found in the forgotten grounds of chaos that they resided in. This was one of the reasons why Xianxia and the other 29 disciples had done everything they could and resolutely risked their lives to come here. Possessing region energy was equivalent to possessing the foundation to become a region lord, and it was extremely beneficial to one's cultivation in the future. It was even to the extent that region lords who possessed region lords had a higher chance of successfully charging into the Daolord realm. Simply speaking, region lords were a type of imperial monarchs, but not every single imperial monarch could become a region lord. One of the criteria to determine if one was a region lord was if that person possessed region energy. At this moment, Xianxia and Gu Yan had to find new regions that hadn't been established yet within the forgotten grounds of chaos, and then refine and absorb the quintessence of these regions. Presently, Xianxia was already clearly aware that if one desired to possess the energy of a region, then one had to find a region first, and then enter the region and refine and absorb its quintessence. In this way, one could obtain region energy, break through the threshold of the imperial monarch realm, and become a true region lord. However, it wasn't so easy to accomplish this. After Xianxia and Gu Yan had set out, they teleported for a few hours and carefully observed the pathways of numerous stars. Yet they hadn't found a single formed region. All of this was related to the ability to locate a region. A region that had taken form possessed a unique aura of the heaven Tao that belonged only to it, and it could be formed into a barrier that was like a wall. This barrier enveloped the entire region, and it could completely separate the region from the other chaotic portions of the starry sky here. To put it in simpler terms, the barrier was like an eggshell, and it protected the egg white and egg yolk. On the other hand, a region that hadn't taken form didn't possess this barrier, and the distribution of its stars were utterly disorderly as well. Something worthy of mentioning was that the term region referred to an area that contained numerous universes, and the region energy was the energy that came from the region's quintessence. Region and region energy, one was a boundary and the other was energy. They were completely different. 2 more hours passed. Suddenly, Xianxia seemed to have noticed something, and he suddenly stopped moving while 2 cold rays of light shot out from his eyes as he swiftly looked towards the distance. At practically the exact same moment, the space extremely far in the distance had suddenly exploded into pieces and formed a spatial rift while an extremely enormous corpse swiftly floated out from within. It was a corpse indeed. It was extremely long and completely covered in ancient damaged pieces of bronze armor. It floated silently in midair like a floating mass of land because it was truly too enormous. Even though it had no fluctuations of vitality, but it emanated an aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. When looked at from the angle that Xianxia was looking from, he could merely see 2 extremely enormous souls, and they rose up into the sky like 2 mountains. This seems to be an innate fiend god that was born from within the chaos. Gu Yan spoke with shock, and his voice carried disbelief. How could he have perished here? Even his corpse wasn't buried and laid to eternal rest in the ground. An innate fiend god. Even Xianxia's heart shook when he heard this title. This was an existence that had been born in the chaos at the absolute beginning of the world, and as soon as it was born, it possessed numerous terrifying innate divine abilities like the ability to control water, fire, and lightning. It could incinerate mountains, boil seas, and was all-powerful. Moreover, the primeval times could absolutely be said to belong to the innate fiend gods, because such existences could be reborn from a single drop of blood, and so long as a strand of their consciousness remained, then their soul would be eternal. Moreover, their bodies contained a strand of natural energy, so it was almost impossible to kill them. During the boundless years of the past, there had been too many rumors about the innate fiend gods, and all sorts of extraordinary and world-shocking figures had emerged as well, like the ancestor of the Yuchao clan, the master of Nuostao Palace, the master of the Mancha period, the 10 great shaman ancestors of the primeval times. Since he'd started cultivating until now, Xianxia had naturally heard too many legends like these, but he'd never seen a true innate fiend god that had been born from within the chaos. So, when he saw this corpse of an innate fiend god that towered into the sky, Xianxia felt slightly shocked in his heart. Indeed, how could such a terrifying existence have perished here? And it was even to the extent that its corpse wasn't buried and laid to eternal rest in the ground. Had it entered this place like the Rock Dowlord had all those years ago but was unable to escape in the end and perished here? Swish! Space fluctuated as the floating corpse of the innate fiend god in the distance had started to move slowly. Even though it didn't have a trace of vitality, the aura it emanated was horrifying. It was like extremely terrifying danger was hidden within the corpse. Retreat! Xianxia's brows knit together as he gazed at the corpse that was approaching ceaselessly, and a wisp of coldness couldn't help but arise in his heart. He practically instinctively led Gu Yan along as he flashed towards the side. He intended to go around this strange corpse. After all, this was the forgotten grounds of chaos, and it was filled with boundless danger and unknown terrors. So, she didn't dare be careless in the slightest. OM. However, before the two of them could even move around it, a strand and icy cold fluctuations arose from the corpse, and it swept out like a ripple that enveloped the world. Bang! At practically the exact same time, the damaged bronze armor that covered the fiend god's corpse had suddenly exploded into pieces before a row of pitch-black figures that seemed like locusts had charged out from within the corpse. They covered the heavens and the earth like a dark cloud. In an instant, they completely blocked off Xianxia and Gu Yan's paths. What's this? Xianxia's heart shook as he instantly discerned to his shock that those pitch-black figures were wasps. These wasps were extremely tiny like grains of rice. When he looked carefully at them, they actually had a beautiful and icy cold face of a beauty, a pair of bright blood-red pupils, a pale face, and a pair of pitch-black and seemingly translucent wings on their backs. In overall, they seemed beautiful, strange, and horrifying. They were clearly just the size of rice and were extremely inconspicuous, yet they flew swiftly like bolts of lightning and were able to move through space. Moreover, their entire bodies emanated a bloodthirsty and icy cold aura. What are these things? Xianxia grew even more vigilant in his heart. Even though these wasps were the size of rice grains, they were like a swarm of locusts when gathered together. They formed a dense group of thousands, and the aura they emanated was so terrifying that she felt a chill run down his spine. Leave! Quickly! It took a long time to describe yet occurred in an instant. These thoughts had merely flashed in Xianxia's heart before he instinctively changed the direction that he led Gu Yan towards and flashed explosively towards the direction they'd come from. But in merely an instant, Xianxia stopped while his expression turned solemn, because another enormous corpse of an innate fiend god had suddenly appeared in the air behind him. There was no doubt in Xianxia's heart that this corpse definitely had numerous wasps hidden within it as well. Martial ancestral uncle, we seem to have been encircled. Gu Yan had a solemn expression, and a clang resounded as he withdrew a brilliant sword that was over 1 m long and suffused with starlight. Looks like we can only continue charging forward and open a path of escape. Xianxia took a deep breath as he withdrew the talisman armament, and his eyes flowed with a cold glow and surged with copious killing intent. Charge! Amidst a loud shout, Xianxia's dense black hair fluttered, while the talisman armament in his hand transformed into a brilliant torrent that slashed through the sky. It seemed like a ray that could pierce the sun, and it emanated peerlessly ferocious might. Rumble! In an instant, the first group of wasps that charged over were covered by this sword chi, and they were simultaneously blasted apart into strands of bloody mist. However, before she could even feel happy for the success he achieved, the bloody mist actually converged together once more and was condensed into numerous wasps. With Xia's current cultivation in the sword Dao, he was actually unable to put an end to their lives. Xi's eyes couldn't help but narrow when he witnessed this scene. He determined that the combat strength possessed by every single wasp was at most comparable to a universe-enlightened ancestral god at the initial stage, and dealing with such opponents were simply as easy as blowing off dust for Xianxia. Earlier, the true source of his fears was that these wasps were truly too numerous. They formed a dense expanse that covered the heavens and the earth and surged like a tide. Moreover, they were still ceaselessly swarming out from within the corpse, and it seemed like there was no end to them. Now, when he saw that the wasps which he'd annihilated with a swing of his sword had actually instantly come back to life and recovered to their previous state, Xianxia instantly realized how terrifying they were. because these damnable things weren't just huge in number, they even possessed the ability to resurrect themselves. So, they were extremely difficult to be killed. Damn it! What exactly are they? Gu Yen had a solemn expression as he swung his sword without end, and he successively annihilated the wasps that charged towards them. Don't worry about that. Continue charging. Xianxia's expression was murderous as he spoke swiftly. At this moment, expanse after expanse of dense wasps were flying out from the corpse behind them, and they would be completely trapped once they were completely encircled. Kill! 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 At this moment, Xianxia and Gu Yen seemed to have realized how serious the situation was, and they practically utilized their entire strengths, as they did all they could to charge forward. Bang! The talisman armament soared through the sky as it emanated an extraordinarily large and thick strand of sword chi. It was brilliant, vast, and covered in a myriad of talisman markings as it smashed through space. Xianxia's entire body effused killing intent while he seemed like an emperor of the sword that has descended into the sky, and he easily destroyed everything that stood before the edge of his blade. Swoosh! 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 At the same time, Gu Yen soared through space with his sword in hand, and his sword insight was like a waterfall, ocean, lightning, flames, and so on and so forth. It formed a myriad of grand phenomena as he charged at full speed by Xianxia's side. In merely the time for a few breaths, the two of them had charged a distance of over 3 kilometers through the swarm of wasps, and they were on the verge of approaching the fiend god's corpse. According to this speed, it would only take a moment before they could charge out of the encirclement and escape from this difficult situation. Bang! However, before they could even approach it, the corpse actually stood up as if it had awakened from deep sleep. Its towering figure simply seemed like a pillar that could support the sky, and it was oppressing and ferocious to the extreme. But if one looked carefully, this corpse didn't possess any fluctuations of vitality, and the reason it had suddenly awakened was because countless wasps were displaying their might from within its body. In other words, the corpse was being jointly controlled by countless wasps. Bang! The corpse opened its mouth and spat, and an expanse of blood-red lightning swept down like a waterfall. The lightning crushed space into powder as it smashed down forcefully at Xianxia and Gu Yen. Merely this attack alone actually caused the surroundings to dim down while all things trembled, and even space was filled with a horrifyingly destructive aura. Damn it! At this moment, Xianxia's calm expression had finally changed slightly because he'd sensed that aura emanated from this corpse of a fiend god which was being controlled by countless wasps was actually on par with an imperial monarch. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary first-star or second-star imperial monarch. Xianxia had fought imperial monarch Nandu and imperial monarch Miaofeng in the past. So how could he possibly be unaware that the strength possessed by this corpse right now was at least at the third-star imperial monarch realm or above? Even if it was merely a third-star imperial monarch, under the circumstances that he didn't utilize the Godslaughter burst or detonated some natural spirit treasures, then he was utterly not a match for it while relying on his current combat strength. Bang! At this critical moment, Xianxia had no choice but to evade. He brought Gu Yen along as he flashed towards the side at full speed, and he barely avoided this attack. However, an abyss that covered an area of 5,000 kilometers was forcefully blasted open on the ground, and it was impossible to see the bottom of it. This clearly showed how severe the consequences would be if that blood-red lightning had struck onto Xianxia and Gu Yen. Bang! The corpse roared loudly because it missed, and then an expanse of blood-red lightning swept out from its bloody mouth and rumbled as they struck down. At the same time, it stretched its arms, causing a large blood-red net of lightning to be formed between its hands, and the net enveloped this expanse of the heavens and the earth. It seemed as if it wanted to completely trap Xianxia and Gu Yen here. This corpse was truly too tall. Xianxia and Gu Yen were simply like ants before it. Moreover, its attacks were terrifying to the extreme. The blood-red lightning covered the heavens and the earth, and they dyed the entire world blood-red. Let's go! At this moment, Xianxia had no choice but to avoid the brunt of its force as well, and he charged towards the other side with Gu Yen. Bang! However, right at this moment, the corpse behind them rumbled as it stood up as well, and it jointly blocked off their paths of retreat with the other corpse. The situation was critical. At this moment, Xianxia and Gu Yen were like insects that had fallen into a huge net, and they were facing two corpses of fiend gods that were comparable to third-star imperial monarchs. So, they seemed to be extremely tiny and powerless. How could Xianxia have imagined that it wasn't just the environment within the forgotten grounds of chaos that was dangerous? Even battling the living beings here would be so terrifying. It was comparable to a third-star imperial monarch. Not to mention a universe-enlightened ancestral god. Even an ordinary imperial monarch would probably be helpless against it. However, this was the forgotten grounds of chaos. It was dangerous, filled with the unknown, and unimaginable dangers existed within it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have become an existence that was reputed to be a forbidden place throughout the ages. I'll detonate a natural spirit treasure later and seize a chance for us to escape to safety. Gu Yen, you must make sure to follow closely by my side. At this extremely dangerous moment, Xianxia took a deep breath while a wisp of a resolute expression flashed in his eyes as he spoke swiftly to Gu Yen via voice transmission. Under such circumstances, he could only utilize such a method to try and desperately defy death. However, before Xianxia could act, a clear, melodious, and gentle voice suddenly resounded by his ear. Young master, quickly let Aoyang out. Aoyang? Xianxia's eyes narrowed. Never had he imagined that this princess of the primeval microrace would actually wake up at this critical moment. Aoyang, it's dangerous out here now. I'll let you out. Xianxia hadn't finished speaking when a loud bang resounded. An expanse of blood red lightly had rained down and almost enveloped Xianxia's entire body. Bang! Even if he'd evaded it in the end, this attack still shook Xianxia to the point within his body hurt faintly, and it was to the point he'd almost coughed up blood. Martial ancestral uncle, are you all right? Gu Yen came over to support Xianxia. I'm fine. As he spoke, Xianxia withdrew the Yin-Yang universe flag with the intention of detonating it. Young master, let Aoyang out. Aoyang can deal with those blood Rakshasa wasps. Aoyang's voice resounded once more, and it carried an anxious tone. Blood Rakshasa wasps? Aoyang can deal with them? Xianxia's eyes narrowed, and he was slightly hesitant. Rumble. Meanwhile, those two towering fiend god corpses had approached from both sides. Their entire bodies were coiled by surging blood-red lightning storms while their auras were monstrously tyrannical to the point of being suffocating. Young master, quickly. Aoyang's voice was even more anxious. The situation was pressing, and they were in imminent danger. In the end, Xianxia gritted his teeth, withdrew a bronze box, and opened it gently. Swoosh! Aoyang, who wore a plain dress and a crown of flowers, had long hair that hung down to her shoulders, and possessed a peerlessly beautiful appearance, flew out swiftly from within the box. She was extremely tiny, and she was like a fairy as she fluttered about in the air and emanated a pure and graceful aura. As he dodged the attacks of the enemy, Xianxia spoke in a doubtful tone. Aoyang, you're not facing just a single blood Rakshasa wasp, so you must be careful. If you're unable to resist them... While Xianxia was reminding her, Aoyang had withdrawn an ancient beast skin drum, and the surface of the drum was covered in strange and dense patterns and markings of the Tao. The God Smash drum. Dong! Before Xianxia could finish speaking, Aoyang was already chanting a scripture, while her fair right hand had slapped lightly towards the space before her. The God Smash drum that floated in midair suddenly shook, and then it emanated an expanse of dazzling divine radiance as it shot into the sky. Accompanying all of this was the sound of the drum. This sound was heavy and deep like an army trampling through the lands or lightning raging through the world. It shook the heavens and the earth. Rumble. The space here exploded into pieces. The sound wave from the drum was seemingly material, and it instantly shook the bodies of those towering fiend god corpses. In an instant, Xianxia noticed to his shock that the two corpses which were approaching menacingly actually seemed as if they'd been struck by lightning. Their entire bodies were stiff on the spot, and it was like they'd become statues. What? Gu Yen couldn't help but be stunned. Never had he imagined that a single strike of a drum would actually be able to gain such terrifying and miraculous effects. After all, those two corpses were existences comparable to third-star imperial monarchs. Let's go! How could Xianxia let such a rare opportunity slip by? He didn't hesitate at all to bring Gu Yan and Aoyang along to leave this place. Young master, relax. It's not over. Aoyang's reaction caused Xianxia to be stunned once more. In the next moment, Aoyang gestured with her left hand, and then an exquisite and majestic divine staff that was made completely of jade and suffused with brilliant golden light appeared in her hand. The divine stick of incineration. Just like the Godsmash drum, it was a treasure passed down in the primeval microrace. According to legend, it was passed down by the ancestor of the primeval microrace, and it possessed unfathomable might. Swish! Meanwhile, Xianxia had noticed that while the corpses remained motionless and seemed to have stiffened completely on the spot, only a mere instant passed before row after row of blood Rakshasa wasps fell out like tidewater from within the corpses. At this moment, these mysterious wasps that were originally savage, bloodthirsty, icy cold, and cruel actually seemed as if they'd lost consciousness, and they trickled down from the two corpses of fiend gods. Heavenly flames become one. Incinerate all evil. Amidst her gentle, clear, and melodious chanting, Aoyang's expression became solemn and pure, and he lightly waved the divine stick of incineration through the air. In an instant, numerous white-colored flames covered the heavens and the earth as they surged out like waves, and they enveloped down towards the blood Rakshasa wasps. The heavens and the earth had become a pure ocean of white flames that burned and surged incessantly. Xianxia could clearly notice that the dense expanse of blood Rakshasa wasps seemed to have awakened from their unconscious state, and their beautiful yet icy-cold faces had warped from terror as they let out sharp and ear-piercing cries. However, no matter how they struggled, they were unable to charge out of the ocean of divine flames. In the end, numerous bangs resounded as their bodies were incinerated and melted into strands of blood-red mist. After that, even the blood-red mist was incinerated, causing them to be unable to fuse together once more. Thus they perished for good. Xianxia couldn't help but be visibly moved when he witnessed all of this. He was very clearly aware how difficult it was to kill those wasps. However, Aoyang had merely relied on the Godsmash drum and divine stick of incineration in her possession to easily annihilate all of these wasps. So, how could Xianxia not be amazed? Is this what it means when they say that everything has a counter? Gu Yan was stunned as well, and he felt slight disbelief. Young master, we're completely sage now. Meanwhile, Aoyang seemed as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders, and a wisp of a happy smile appeared on the corners of her mouth. Amazing! I never imagined that after you slept for so many years, you would actually possess such shocking might as soon as you awakened. I truly feel ashamed of my inferiority. Xianxia clapped and laughed as he spoke with sincere praise. He'd naturally discerned that Aoyang had utilized the Godsmash drum to stun the wasps, causing them to lose control of the corpses and fall out from within them. After that, she utilized the might of the divine stick of incineration to incinerate all the wasps in one go and completely put an end to any possibility of resurrection. Such methods were straightforward and fatal. From the beginning until the end, it seemed like it was as easy as blowing off dust. If Xianxia hadn't witnessed it with his 1-2 eyes, even he would be unable to believe all of this. After all, those two corpses at least possessed the strengths of third-star imperial monarchs under the control of the blood Rakshasa wasps. On the other hand, Aoyang was merely at the initial stage of the universe enlightened ancestral god realm now. However, she was able to accomplish all of this. So, it naturally seemed extremely inconceivable. Aoyang was instantly slightly embarrassed when she heard Xianxia's praise. She lowered her head while her fair hands were held together, and she stammered. Young master, it isn't Aoyang who's formidable. It's the two treasures in Aoyang's possession that just happen to be the counters for those blood Rakshasa wasps. Xianxia was naturally clearly aware of this. However, if Aoyang wasn't here, then it would naturally be impossible for those two divine treasures to reveal their might. Martial ancestral uncle, is this that princess of the primeval microrace? Asked Gu Yan while his gaze carried a wisp of curiosity. It was the first time he'd met a descendant of the primeval microrace, and he noticed that they really were as the rumors said. The bodies of the primeval microrace were small like a bean and extremely inconspicuous. However, Gu Yen would absolutely not dare underestimate Aoyang because of that. Yes, Aoyang, this is Gu Yen. According to seniority, I'm his martial ancestral uncle. Xianxia smiled as she introduced them. Greetings, young master Gu Yen. Aoyang bowed and seemed very obedient. Gu Yen hurriedly said, just call me Gu Yen. Xianxia swept his gaze towards the distance, and he noticed that the two corpses were still standing towering there like statues that didn't have even a trace of vitality. Even though they stood towering in the heavens and the earth, they revealed a solemn and sorrowful aura. They were unable to attain eternal rest beneath the earth and became controlled by evil instead. It's truly a pity. Xianxia sighed. He walked forward and bowed seriously 3 times towards the two corpses. After that, he flicked his sleeve, and an expanse of divine flames sprayed out and incinerated them in a short period of a few breaths of time. After that, she put their ashes away carefully into 2 jade boxes before burying them in the ground. Let's leave this place first. After he finished all of this, she instructed Gu Yen and Aoyang. Thank you. Thank you. However, right when Xianxi's group was about to leave, 2 voices that were deep and desolate had suddenly resounded at practically the exact same moment. Xianxia was stunned, and then he suddenly turned around and looked towards the spot he buried the ashes of those 2 innate fiend gods. However, he didn't notice anything. Young master, that was a strand of the will of those innate fiend gods because they had regrets before they died. Now they're finally free, and it has dispersed along with this. So, they naturally have to thank you, young master. Aoyang had clearly heard those voices as well, and she couldn't help but gaze at Xianxia with slight admiration. I didn't do this to obtain their thanks. Xianxia smiled and remained indifferent towards this as he turned around and left. 1 hour later, Xianxi's group safely traversed numerous extremely dangerous regions and finally found a safe place. Let's rest for a while, and we'll set out again later. Xianxia sat cross-legged while he gazed up into the sky. A myriad of stars were flickering there, yet they were in utter disorder and didn't reveal even a trace of the aura of a barrier. This meant that up until now, the entire expanse of the starry sky he'd laid eyes upon still showed no signs of a region that had taken form. Xianxia suddenly asked, Aoyang, how were you able to recognize the blood Rakshasa wasps? Exactly what sort of beings are they? At this moment, Aoyang was sitting in the oracle of Xianxi's ear just as she'd done in the past. She was smiling while she shook her legs, and her expression was completely tranquil and carefree. Aoyang tilted her head and thought for a moment upon hearing Xianxi's question, and then she said in a clear voice, Aoyang heard it from Grandma. All those years ago, the Rock Tao Lord had led our primeval micro-race to the forgotten grounds of chaos with him, and they'd fought these blood Rakshasa wasps on many occasions. She paused for a moment before she continued. According to Grandma, these wasps are beings unique to the forgotten grounds of chaos. They're naturally born with bloodthirsty and cruel disposition, and they are especially fond of devouring the spirit, energy, and essence of cultivators. They frequently reside within corpses and decaying flesh, so it's very difficult to notice them. Xianxia came to a sudden understanding, and then he frowned and said, Then do you know why they are able to control the corpse of a fiend god and bring forth a might that isn't inferior to a 3rd-star imperial monarch? Aoyang didn't give it any thought before she replied. It's very simple. All of these beings in the forgotten grounds of chaos possess a sort of energy, and it's an energy that allows them to bring forth the might of a corpse when its owner was still alive by way of controlling the corpse itself. By controlling a corpse, they are able to bring forth strength that corresponds to the corpse's owner's strength, while the corpse's owner was still alive. As for the reason behind this, even Grandma couldn't explain it. She merely said that it's probably related to the laws of the Heaven Tao in the forgotten grounds of chaos. It's related to the laws of the Heaven Tao. Xianxi's heart shook. After he entered the forgotten grounds of chaos, he'd similarly noticed that the laws of the Heaven Tao here contained an aura that was completely different to the ancient god domain. It was unfamiliar, mysterious, and unfathomable. The laws of the heaven Tao that filled the forgotten grounds of chaos was different indeed. It carried a strange, mysterious, and unfamiliar aura that was very different from the ancient god domain. With Xianxia's current ability, it was still very difficult for him to deduce the reason behind this. Young master, there's no need to worry. These two treasures in Aoyang's possession just happen to counter numerous living beings here, and it's sufficient to help young master resolve a great deal of danger. When she saw Xianxia, she pondered deeply in silence. Aoyang couldn't help but try to console him. Xianxia chuckled and said, "Then I'll be troubling Aoyang." Aoyang clenched her tender little fists and nodded with force. "Don't worry, young master. No one will dare bully young master with Aoyang by your side." Xianxia couldn't help but feel warmth surge within his heart when he heard the seriousness and firmness in Aoyang's tone. This little girl is truly likable. Right, Aoyang? Do you recognize the writing on these 5 pieces of beast skin? Suddenly, Xianxia had a flash of inspiration and withdrew the 5 pieces of the secret map. Even though he'd obtained them from the 5 extremes of the imperial region, its true owner was the Rock Tao Lord. On the other hand, Aoyang was from the primeval micro-race, and she was closely related to the Rock Tao Lord. Aoyang was stunned, and then her figure flashed before she arrived in front of Xianxia, and then her pitch-black yet clear eyes started sizing up those pieces of the map. "Eh!" Upon first glance, Aoyang said with surprise, "Young master, where did you get these pieces of beast skin? She might really be able to read it." Aoyang's reaction caused Xianxia's spirits to be refreshed, and then he didn't hesitate to tell her the origins of these pieces of beast skin. Aoyang came to a sudden understanding and said, "No wonder. Only the Rock Tao Lord would be able to grasp the ancient Cloudvein script that's only passed down within the royal family of my primeval micro-race." At this moment, Xianxia couldn't maintain his calm any longer, and he said with surprise, "You're saying that the writing on these pieces of beast skin are a type of script from your primeval micro-race?" Aoyang nodded. "Exactly. However, only the descendants of our primeval micro-race's royal family are able to learn and understand this script." Xianxia's eyes lit up. "In this way, wouldn't that mean that you can read these words?" Aoyang nodded again, and then her beautiful brows knit together. She pondered deeply for a moment before she said, "However, these pieces of beast skin are too damaged and many parts of them are incomplete. I'm only able to read those words, yet I don't know the meaning they wish to represent." Xianxia's brows raised and said, "Aoyang, read out the words that you recognize first." Aoyang pointed at one of the pieces of beast skin and said, "There are 3 characters from the ancient Cloudvein script on this beast skin, and it's..." And, after that, she pointed successively at the other 4 pieces of beast skin and told Xianxia about the words written on each and every one of them. The second piece of beast skin had the characters, and, written on it. The third piece of beast skin had the characters, and, written on it. The fourth piece of beast skin had the characters, and, written on it. The second piece of beast skin had the characters, and, written on it. These characters were in disorder, and while it seemed like he knew all these words, Xianxia was unable to discern anything when he truly tried to comprehend them. Xianxia tried to rearrange them over and over again, yet the clues he possessed were too limited in the end. After all, it was the complete secret map, so the secrets it contained were incomplete and in extreme disorder. What exactly does all of this mean? Is it the name of that mysterious place? Or are they clues related to the secrets of the ultimate path towards the Tao? Xianxia fell into deep thought. When Aoyang and Gu Yan saw this, they stopped talking and refrained from disturbing Xianxia. After an unknown period of time, a strand of a feeling of familiarity suddenly arose in Xianxia's heart. He faintly felt that he'd experienced a similar scene. In an instant, Xianxia suddenly recalled that he'd obtained some obscure and unknown characters when he obtained the river diagram fragments, and they were in extreme disorder and incomprehensible. However, it was exactly because those characters contained the characters of, and that represented Imperial region that Xianxia had resolutely taken action to head to the Imperial region. Similarly, it was exactly because of these characters that he'd headed to the desolate Manka ruins and noticed all sorts of clues that were related to the river diagram. Even now, she still remembered that the characters revealed on the river diagram fragments were, and, amongst these characters, and, represented the imperial region in the ancient god domain. The characters, and, were related to the desolate Manka ruins, and it was precisely this clue that allowed Xianxia to realize that the master of the Manka period, Xian, was the seventh comprehender of the river diagram. Besides these 5 known characters, there were the characters of, and, that she still hadn't deciphered. However, at this moment, when he combined this with the characters branded on the 5 pieces of beast skin, she instantly made a shocking discovery. Amongst the characters recorded on the pieces of beast skin, the characters of, and, were present there as well. In other words, characters that corresponded to those last 5 unknown characters on the river diagram fragments could actually be found on the pieces of beast skin. Was this a coincidence? Or was there some sort of link between them? When he thought up to here, a wisp of surprise couldn't help but arise in Xianxia's heart. These 5 pieces of beast skin had been left behind by the Rock Tao Lord all those years ago, and the secrets of a secret place within the forgotten grounds of chaos was recorded on them. If one was able to arrive at that place, then it was very likely that one would obtain the true secrets of the ultimate path towards the Tao. This was the uniform opinion of all the 5 extremes of the imperial region. Yet now, the river diagram fragments actually faintly showed signs of being related to all of this. Could it be that there's a link between the river diagram and that mysterious place in the forgotten grounds of chaos? The river diagram fragments, the forgotten grounds of chaos, the secret place, the true secrets of the ultimate path towards the Tao. When he combined all of these clues together, Xianxia's train of thought gradually grew clearer and clearer, but when he thought about it carefully, he was still unable to figure all of this out. All of this was because the information he possessed right now was practically incomplete. Moreover, they came from his own inferences, so even Xianxia was unable to determine if they were accurate. But no matter what, this discovery still caused Xianxia to feel excited. In his opinion, if he was able to find that secret place during this trip to the forgotten grounds of chaos, then perhaps he would be able to figure everything out. But exactly which part of the forgotten grounds of chaos does that secret place reside? Xianxia couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he thought up to here. If I had the complete map in my possession, then would I have to make such inferences? After that, he recovered his calm and started to analyze everything. Since the secret map in my possession is incomplete, then it at least proves that there are other pieces in the world, and I'll definitely be able to complete the map if I can find them. But where exactly are they? Xianxia had thought of this before he came to the forgotten grounds of chaos, but at that time, he absolutely didn't have such an urgent desire to know the answer. Unfortunately, even if he urgently desired to know the answer, it was utterly impossible to accomplish at this moment. In the end, he could only shake his head helplessly and suppress this question to the depths of his heart. "Young master, have you encountered a problem?" Aoyang couldn't help but ask this when she saw Xianxia, who was pondering deeply, had suddenly sighed. Gu Yan shot his gaze over as well. "Indeed, but I've already grasped some clues now, and perhaps I'll be able to unravel it in the future." Xianxia took a deep breath, and then he put away the 5 pieces of beast skin before he said with a smile on his face, "All right, there's no need to worry. Let's continue." "Yes." Gu Yan and Aoyang nodded simultaneously. They immediately set out and continued their search for a region that hadn't been discovered. Even though the rumor about the secret place in the forgotten grounds of chaos possessed the secrets of the ultimate paths towards the Tao was extremely tempting, in Xianxia's opinion, the final objective of his trip to the forgotten grounds of chaos was to establish a region and obtain region energy in order to ascend to the ranks of region lords. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and over 10 days had passed without them noticing it. During this period of time, their group of 3 had experienced all sorts of dangers and disasters, and there were even a few occasions where they'd almost suffered calamity. The reason was that the environment in the forgotten grounds of chaos was truly too dangerous. Lightning strikes, gales, volcanoes, spatial rifts, baleful energy, mists of blood, and all sorts of strange and terrifying living beings. The dangers here were truly too numerous. If it wasn't for the fact that the God-Smash drum and divine stick of incineration in Aoyang's possession were capable of displaying extraordinary and miraculous effects when dealing with those living beings, then Xianxia would even wonder if he would be able to persist safely until this point. However, everything he experienced all along the way provided Xianxia a deeper understanding of how extremely lucky he was to have brought Aoyang along this time. Even though this princess of the primeval micro-race was merely at the initial stage of the universe-enlightened ancestral god realm, the two treasures she inherited from her ancestors possessed boundless might and displayed unimaginable strength. It was no wonder that the Rock Tao Lord had brought the ancestors of the primeval micro-race along when he entered the forgotten grounds of chaos. On the 13th day, bang! A world-shocking bang resounded while pure white flames seethed like an ocean. And then a strange and tall living being with a savage appearance howled and struggled within the ocean of flames, yet was incinerated into nothingness in the end. Fortunately, this blood-eyed titan didn't have a sharp mind and only knew how to fight with brute force. Otherwise, it wouldn't be very difficult to kill him. Aoyang heaved a sigh of relief while her peerlessly beautiful little face was suffused with a wisp of a relaxed expression. The blood-eyed titan was a type of terrifying living being in the forgotten grounds of chaos. It lived within storms and was born with brute strength that could move mountains and reclaim oceans. Its strength was so formidable that it was comparable to an imperial monarch. But in the end, this blood-eyed titan had perished at the hands of a young miss at the initial stage of the universe-enlightened ancestral god realm like Aoyang. This clearly showed how there was always a counter for everything. Moreover, this wasn't the first terrifying living being that Aoyang had killed. During this period of over 10 days, at least 8 existences that could rival the blood-eyed titan had perished at Aoyang's hands, and this had successively helped Xianxia resolve numerous problems that would be extremely difficult to deal with. Rumble. However, right when Xianxia's group intended to leave, an expanse of stars that were extremely far in the distance had suddenly shaken violently. After that, those stars plummeted to the ground. They were like numerous enormous fireballs that were descending from the sky, and they were extremely dazzling to the point they even illuminated the world. Someone is in battle there. Gu Yan's eyes narrowed and flowed with a cold light. Exactly. If I'm not wrong, then a region that has taken form is definitely hidden over there, and perhaps the battle is related to the ownership of that region. Xianxia spoke in a low voice. His senses were extremely formidable. So even if it was extremely far away, he was still able to notice that a strand of the unique aura of a barrier that belonged to a region existed there. There was no sky above the forgotten grounds of chaos, and it was stars that filled the sky which entered one's field of vision when looking upward. This vast starry sky was seemingly boundless. But this didn't mean that cultivators could move freely through the starry sky. There was only a single reason for this. When compared to the ground, the starry sky in the forgotten grounds of chaos was even more dangerous and terrifying. Once cultivators entered it, then they wouldn't just encounter planetary vortexes and starburst, they might even be swept into spatial black holes and perish on within them. Most importantly, the starry sky in the forgotten grounds of chaos was in complete disorder. So, it was extremely easy to get lost while moving forward amidst it, causing one to be forever unable to find the way out. Of course, all of this was merely related to those regions that hadn't taken form. On the other hand, because those regions that had taken form already possessed their own unique barrier, it caused their distribution to be clear and orderly. All the universes within the region were stable, so even if cultivators would still encounter all sorts of dangers while within the starry sky there, the level of danger would really lower by a great deal, and it would be roughly on par with traveling on the ground. So, until they noticed a region that had taken form, Xianxia's group could only travel on the ground. Let's go take a look. When they noticed that a formed region existed extremely far away in the distance, and it was very likely that a battle was occurring there, Xianxia pondered deeply for a moment before he made this decision. No matter if it was friend or foe, he had to seize this opportunity and clearly sense exactly how formed regions were and what sort of existence the region quintessence was. This would be vital to Xianxia's search after this. Martial ancestral uncle. If it's an enemy, then should we make a move? Gu Yen spoke with a piercingly cold gaze. Let's take a look at the situation first. Chun Shi's eyes narrowed. If we have the opportunity, then we should naturally spare no effort to refine and absorb the region energy there. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They didn't delay and immediately teleported through space and flashed towards the starry sky there. No! Zhao Qingyao had a livid expression as she howled with extreme sorrow and rage, and her slender and delicate figure was trembling from rage. This disciple from True Phoenix Palace was actually unable to control her emotions at this moment. Bang! Before her voice could finish resounding, Wang Zhong had completed his attack, and a bloody head was tossed into the air. The eyes on the head were opened wide with rage, and unwillingness and hatred still remained on its face. But in merely an instant, this head exploded into pieces. The horrifying thing was that Wang Zhong grabbed the headless corpse, and then he started sucking large mouthfuls of the blood that was ceaselessly spraying from its neck. He was like a wild beast that was feeding on the flesh and blood of its prey. Oh, how many years has it been? I've finally tasted the blood of a peak universe enlightened ancestral god again. I truly missed this taste. After a short moment, Wang Zhong raised his head and sighed with satisfaction, while a stream of blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, causing his handsome appearance to seem unusual, mysterious, and terrifying. On the other hand, Zhao Qingyao had been stunned by this scene since a long time ago, and her pupils had dilated while her entire body felt cold. The cultivator who'd been killed by Wang Zhong was the disciple of the divine mountain of creation, Tai Shuhong. Just like Zhao Qingyao, both of them were peerless geniuses that had stood above the rest in the battles of the Dao discussion's first round. Yet now, Tai Shuhong was dead. He hadn't died from the dangers present within the forgotten grounds of chaos, and he died at Wang Zhong's hands instead. Zhao Qingyao was slightly unable to accept this. After all, just a moment ago, Tai Shuhong, Wang Zhong, and her were allies that had joined forces, and they were discussion who would refine and absorb the quintessence energy of this region. But who would have imagined that Wang Zhong had actually launched a lethal strike in an instant, and he'd heavily injured Tai Shuhong with a single surprise attack before killing Tai Shuhong in the end. It was even to the extent that Wang Zhong didn't even let Tai Shuhong's corpse go, and he'd completely devoured the blood within Tai Shuhong's corpse. This scene seemed especially brutal and perverse. This string of unexpected events caused Zhao Qingyao's heart to suffer an extremely strong impact, and she was filled with disbelief. Why? According to Zhao Qingyao's original plan, amongst the 30 disciples that had entered the forgotten grounds of chaos this time, 25 were from the 5 extremes of the imperial region, and only Tai Shuhong, Wang Zhong, Jianan, Sun Jin from the Temple of Minimalism, and she herself were from 5 different ancient sections. Jianan was used to doing everything by himself. On the other hand, Sun Jin had vanished as soon as he entered the forgotten grounds of chaos. Originally, Zhao Qingyao and Tai Shuhong had joined forces, and then Wang Zhong joined their alliance later on. Yet who would have imagined that an allied companion would actually be such a ruthless, merciless, and perverse traitor? All of this took a long time to describe, yet it was actually completed in an instant. At this moment, Zhao Qingyao was infuriated, and her clear eyes were simply on the verge of burning with flames. Wang Zhong, I never imagined that you were actually such a person. Zhao Qingyao spoke coldly while she almost gnashed her teeth into pieces from hatred. I was always such a person. You were just unaware of it. Wang Zhong tossed casually and tossed away Tai Shuhong's corpse that he drained of blood, and then he wiped the corners of his mouth before he smiled and spoke slowly. At this moment, he still wore an embroidered robe, a belt around his waist, a crown of feather on his head, and a pair of shoes with cloud patterns on his feet. He had a dignified, imposing, and graceful bearing. If she hadn't witnessed the cruel scene of him devouring Tai Shuhong's blood, it would truly be impossible to believe that such a dazzling figure that countless people praised to be a dark horse in the Tao discussion would actually commit such a perverse act. Zhao Qingyao, you have pretty good looks. If you agree to be my maidservant, then I'll spare your life. All right? Wang Zhong wasn't anxious to make a move. He smiled as he gazed at Zhao Qingyao, who stood in the distance, and raised this excessive and humiliating suggestion. Zhao Qingyao was angered to the point her entire body shivered, and she said in a grim voice, "You must be out of your mind." Wang Zhong's smile grew even more brilliant as he said, "Don't be angry. No one can save you in this forgotten grounds of chaos. Perhaps you should calm down and consider my suggestion. If you agree, then I can even give the quintessence energy of this region to you." Zhao Qingyao seemed to have thought of something, and her expression actually instantly calmed down. Her icy cold gaze locked onto Wang Zhong as she said, "You're absolutely not Wang Zhong, nor are you a disciple of Golden Toad Isle. If Jianan was here, he would probably really approve of her judgment." Unfortunately, these words didn't cause Wang Zhong's expression to change at all, and he was still grinning. He stretched out his hand to point above him, and then pointed to the ground. In the end, he pointed to himself before he said seriously, "While I'm here, I'm all-powerful. You must remember these words and then answer me. Will you agree to be my maidservant or not?" His voice carried a wisp of an oppressive tone. In an instant, a wisp of a ghastly and murderous aura arose from his body. Obviously, he was getting slightly impatient. "All-powerful." Zhao Qingyao chuckled while her voice was filled with disdain. "A despicable and shameless bastard like you dares to talk nonsense about being all-powerful? I, Zhao Qingyao, would rather die than be reduced to your maidservant. You're courting death." Wang Zhong's gaze turned cold while killing intent surged explosively from him. He spread his palm open like a fan, and a terrifying energy of the Grand Tao coiled around it as it forcefully tore through space and smashed down towards Zhao Qingyao. Rumble. This expanse of space exploded into pieces while rumbling resounded like thunderclaps, and it seemed extremely astounding. At this instant Zhao Qingyao took a deep breath while a wisp of resolution flashed in her clear eyes. She was clearly aware that she wasn't a match for Wang Zhong, but she would rather die in battle this time. Clang! A pair of green curved blades appeared in her palms, and she slashed with a wave of her hands, causing a myriad of true phoenix flames to shoot out and whistle through the air. A world-shaking explosion resounded. Space fell into disorder while terrifying force raged, and it shook the stars in an area of 50,000 kilometers and caused them to plummet to the ground. Bang! Zhao Qingyao was struck to the point of staggering back while her pretty face turned pale. She suddenly realized that the strength Wang Zhong revealed now was actually much more terrifying than it was during the Tao discussion. "You overestimate your strength." Wang Zhong chuckled while his figure flashed, and he attacked again. "If I hadn't concealed some ability, then do you think she could have defeated me during the Tao discussion?" Rumble. His voice hadn't finished resounding when Wang Zhong attacked while barehanded. The force from his palm seemed like a veil that covered the heavens as it enveloped down, and it caused a myriad of strands of black-colored divine radiance to surge. Merely this strike alone had completely sealed off Zhao Qingyao's surroundings, causing her to be unable to flee. Obviously, Wang Zhong intended to end the battle swiftly and wasn't willing to be locked in combat with her. "But you lost in the end." Zhao Qingyao let out a clear howl as she suddenly transformed into an extremely gorgeous and noble true phoenix. Her feathers flowed with flames and glowed brilliantly. Moreover, her imposing aura rose explosively to the limit as well. Bang! Unexpectedly, even if she utilized her trump card, she was actually no match for the strength of a single strike of the palm from Wang Zhong. Her figure was struck to the point of trembling while a mouthful of blood suddenly sprayed from her mouth, and then she transformed back to her human form again while her pretty face was ghastly pale to the extreme. "Come here. Not just anyone in this world can be the maidservant of this lord. Could it be that you refuse to experience such a supreme honor?" Wang Zhong roared with laughter as he exerted strength with his palm once more, and he grabbed at Zhao Qingyao from afar. If he landed this attack, then Zhao Qingyao would utterly lose her ability to fight and would be unable to escape. In an instant, her expression changed, and a wisp of dense unwillingness surged from her clear eyes. Could it be that I'm really going to suffer calamity today? Swoosh! Right at this instant, A peerlessly fierce howl of the sword suddenly resounded through the starry sky and reverberated throughout the 9 heavens. After that, she felt a wave of piercing pain in her eyes, and she was only faintly able to notice an extremely dazzling, blazing, and vast strand of sword qi slash down towards Wang Zhong. Chun Shi! After that, Wang Zhong's extremely furious voice resounded through the starry sky. You damnable bastard! I'd already let you win during the Tao discussion. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Rumble. Before his voice could finish resounding through the surroundings, the sounds of an extremely intense battle resounded. At this moment, Zhao Qingyao's field of vision had finally recovered its clarity. She noticed to her shock that Wang Zhong had been stopped by Chun Shi, and they were in intense battle. Why, did he come to my rescue? Zhao Qingyao was stunned. She'd never imagined that Chun Shi, who she didn't know nor had any connections with, would become her savior at this moment. When compared with her companion Wang Zhong, who'd become a traitor now, the difference between them was obvious. This caused a strand of extremely complicated emotions to suddenly arise in her heart. Sword insight shot into the sky and surged through the starry sky. It crushed the stars before it and caused a myriad of rays of divine radiance to surge. Chun Shi and Wang Zhong were locked in battle. They didn't hold back at all and surged with killing intent as they displayed all the might they possessed. At this moment, Chun Shi's entire body surged with sword insight. Every single move he made possessed an imposing aura of supremacy that looked down upon the ages. Strictly speaking, it was the second time Chun Shi had fought Wang Zhong. This first was during the Tao discussion. Chun Shi had utilized dual swords to take Wang Zhong by surprise and defeat Wang Zhong, who was similarly utilizing dual swords. That battle allowed Chun Shi to have a deep understanding of Wang Zhong's combat strength. However, when he fought Wang Zhong at this moment, Chun Shi noticed that the combat strength Wang Zhong revealed was actually much more formidable than before. Earlier, Zhao Qingyao had a similar feeling. She felt that Wang Zhong had clearly concealed some ability during the Tao discussion. However, Chun Shi didn't think the same, because he acutely noticed that the strength Wang Zhong display had actually faintly formed a sort of unique link with the laws of the Heaven Tao in the Forgotten Grounds of Chaos. It was precisely this link that allowed Wang Zhong's combat strength to obtain an obvious increase. In other words, the reason Wang Zhong's current combat strength was much more formidable when compared to the during the Tao discussion was because he possessed some sort of secret technique, and it allowed him to utilize a portion of the energy of the laws of the Heaven Tao in the Forgotten Grounds of Chaos. This seemed slightly inconceivable. Even though Chun Shi was unable to guess the exact reason, he had a stronger feeling that Wang Zhong's origins were absolutely not ordinary, and it was utterly impossible for Wang Zhong to be a disciple of the Golden Toad Isle. The more it was like this, the firmer Chun Shi's resolution to kill Wang Zhong was. Early on during the Tao discussion, he'd already sensed a trace of incomprehensible detest towards Wang Zhong. Moreover, he noticed that Wang Zhong seemed to have him to be prey and was extremely hostile towards him. Under such circumstances, even if he was unable to figure Wang Zhong's identity out, Chun Shi would absolutely not show any mercy. Rumble. The battle here grew more and more intense. It shook the starry sky and caused enormous bangs that sounded like thunder to sweep towards the surroundings. At this moment, Wang Zhong was filled with killing intent as well. He utilized dual swords as he fought Chun Shi with all his might, and they fought to the point everything in the world dimmed in comparison. Chun Shi, you can't do anything to me here. Wang Zhong roared with laughter and had a haughty bearing. His entire body was enveloped beneath an expanse of black mist, and he was like a horrifying demon god that had come from hell. The Tribulation Terminator sword in his palm carried surging jet black light as he attacked, and it emanated terrifying and obliterating might. Is that so? Chun Shi's eyes were piercingly cold while his entire body seethed with the supreme imposing aura of an imperial sovereign. It seemed like he looked down upon all living beings and reigned supreme. In an instant, his might rose explosively once more. Swoosh! The talisman armament swept through the air while violet gold divine radiance seethed, and he emanated a myriad of brilliant talismans as he executed an enormous and thick strand of sword chi that shot through the starry sky. Rumble! Everywhere the sword chi passed, stars rumbled and exploded into powder. Neither space nor the world could stop it, and it possessed peerless might. During the final battle of the Tao discussion, Xianxia had related on such ability to defeat Lang Xinghuan in one go. At that time, Wang Zhong had witnessed the battle, so he was naturally clearly aware of how terrifying this attack was. No matter how confident he was, his expression couldn't help but change slightly now while his pupils constricted. Swoosh! Wang Zhong exerted all his strength to execute an extraordinary strand of sword chi that towered into the sky, and it collided head-on with Xianxia's attack. Bang! A world-shaking collision resounded. Wang Zhong's entire body was blasted flying by over 3 kilometers, and his entire body twitched while he couldn't help but cough up large mouthfuls of blood. Damn it! Xianxia! The day this lord recovers his true self will be the day of your death. Wang Zhong roared loudly. His hair was disheveled while his eyes had become extremely scarlet red, and he seemed extremely terrifying. Swoosh! In the next moment, he actually retreated and fled towards the distance. You want to leave? Leave your life behind. Along with this icy cold voice, Gu Yan's figure suddenly charged out and blocked Wang Zhong's path. At practically the exact same moment, a wisp of immense sword chi slashed down forcefully towards Wang Zhong. Gu Yan had clearly been accumulating strength for a long time, and he was hiding in the shadows in case Wang Zhong fled. All of this had occurred too quickly, and it instantly took Wang Zhong by surprise. This sword chi struck forcefully on his chest, and it tore a bone deep wound open there. Bastard! Wang Zhong roared with pain, and his expression turned savage. If he hadn't dodged in time, then this strike would have almost taken his life. Swoosh! Swoosh! At practically the exact same moment, Zhao Qingyao and Xianxia launched a pincer attack from both sides. In an instant, they'd fully locked off Wang Zhong's paths of retreat. Do all of you think you can kill this lord with just that? How laughable! At this critical moment, Wang Zhong actually laughed coldly, and the space between his brows was filled with an insane and resolute expression. Bang! In an instant, a strange bloody glow suddenly arose on Wang Zhong's body, and it shot into the sky, causing the starry sky to be dyed blood red. It was a horrifying sight to behold. At practically the exact same moment, an aura of extreme danger effused out. Retreat! Quickly! Xianxi's eyes narrowed while he suddenly shouted loudly, and he retreated explosively. Gu Yan and Zhao Qingyao had realized that the situation was bad, and after they received Xianxi's warning, they'd practically instinctively evaded towards the distance. Rumble! Right when they just evaded, Wang Zhong's entire figure suddenly exploded into a myriad of strands of bloody light, and they charged swiftly towards the surroundings. This expanse of the starry sky fell into disorder. Everything was being destroyed while a terrifying energy storm swept through it, and it caused Xianxia and the others to have no choice but to dodge successively as well. After a short moment, this aura of obliteration had finally vanished completely, and this expanse of the starry sky that encompassed a myriad of stars had transformed into a scene of desolation. Not to mention stars, there wasn't even a single meteor in sight. Xianxia, all of you just wait. I'll definitely slice all of you into pieces, burn your bones, and scatter your ashes when we meet next. An icy cold voice that was filled with boundless resentment resounded within the deathly silent expanse of space here, and then it vanished. That fellow is actually alive? Gu Yan's expression changed slightly. He immediately realized that Wang Zhong hadn't detonated himself just now, and Wang Zhong had executed a terrifying secret technique to flee instead. How could this have happened? Zhao Qingyao's expression changed indeterminately as well, and it was filled with disbelief. Wang Zhong was all alone, yet he was actually able to escape before their joint forces. Isn't he a little too formidable? If that fellow died, then I wouldn't doubt his identity. But now, I'm certain that he isn't Wang Zhong. Xianxia took a deep breath while coldness surged in his eyes. It's even to the extent that I feel that fellow isn't a cultivator from the ancient god domain but a variant from the Forgotten Grounds of Chaos instead. From the Forgotten Grounds of Chaos. Gu Yan and Zhao Qingyao were shocked. If this is true, then Wang Zhong's identity is too mysterious. Who exactly is he? Why did he make an appearance in the ancient god domain? How interesting. It seems like the forgotten grounds of chaos is much more mysterious than I imagined. If I'm able to capture Wang Zhong, then perhaps I'll be able to obtain some valuable information from him. Xianxia pondered deeply while seemed to be lost in thought. He'd been constantly pondering about what Wang Zhong had said. He felt that there was definitely a reason why Wang Zhong was hostile towards him. Fellow Taoist Xianxia, thank you for your kindness. Meanwhile, Zhao Qingyao walked forward, bowed, and expressed her gratitude. Don't mention it. Xianxia smiled. A friend of mine entered the True Phoenix Palace a few years ago. So, now that I speak of it, we can be considered to be slightly related. Oh? May I ask who fellow Taoist Xianxia's friend is? Zhao Qingyao's eyes lit up. Zhao Taichi, said Xianxia. Zhao Taichi was a senior of Dao Emperor Academy. After she followed his third senior brother Tai Yunhai and the others to the ancient god domain, she'd headed to the True Phoenix Palace to cultivate because she herself was a descendant of the True Phoenixes. So, it's junior sister Taichi. A wisp of a smile immediately arose on the corners of Zhao Qingyao's mouth. Obviously, she had a rather good relationship with Zhao Taichi. Xianxia was speechless. He'd never imagined that Zhao Taichi would actually become Zhao Qingyao's junior sister. After all, Zhao Taichi's seniority in Dao Emperor Academy was extremely high, and even Xianxia had to address her respectfully as senior. But along with the passage of time, this seniority had undergone a tremendous change according to the difference in strength and identity. Xianxia was a personal disciple of Oracle Mountain and the little junior brother of the Grand Lord Wu Shuachan, whereas Zhao Taichi had become Zhao Qingyao's junior sister. If it was in terms of seniority, then Xianxia was much more superior to her now. Of course, seniority had to be observed strictly amongst fellow disciples of a sect, but there wasn't much importance attached to it while one roamed the world. Xianxia suddenly asked, Miss Zhao, if you don't have anything else to attend to, then how about we search for this region's quintessence together? Zhao Qingyao was stunned, and then her clear eyes focused imperceptibly. Don't worry, I merely desire to see exactly how the quintessence looks like so I can make preparations for the future, said Xianxia while he revealed a smile on his face. Fellow Taoist Xianxia, there's no need for that. If fellow Taoist hadn't rescued me in time, then I would have suffered calamity a long time ago. So, I have no complaints even if I have to give it to you. Zhao Qingyao spoke with a serious expression. If it's your then it's yours. You don't have to say anything else. Xianxia refused to take advantage of her. Since he'd confirmed that Zhao Qingyao was Zhao Taichi's senior sister, then he would naturally not do something like that. This was a principle that Xianxia followed, and he'd held firmly onto it since he'd started cultivating until now. He was staying true to his heart. There's no time to lose or something unexpected might occur. Let's act right away. In the next moment, Xianxia changed the topic. Zhao Qingyao's impression of Xianxia grew extremely better when she witnessed this, and she felt even more grateful to him. She decided that if she had the chance in the future, she would definitely repay this great kindness. Come with me. Zhao Qingyao didn't delay. She had a serious expression as she pointed towards the boundless starry sky in the distance. She said, Earlier, Tai Shuhong and I determined that the quintessence energy of this region might be hidden in that universe over there. Let's go. The three of them immediately flashed and teleported through space, and they flew towards that universe in the starry sky. At a blood-red swamp, the heavens and the earth here were dim and covered in baleful mist, and the deathly silent atmosphere in the surroundings carried a horrifying and ghastly aura. Bang! Suddenly, a blood-red figure descended forcefully like a meteor from the sky and smashed down into the swamp, causing an expanse of dense blood, red mud to spray. Swish! As soon as it descended, it suddenly stood up, and then its scarlet-red eyes swept the surroundings. After that, it instantly eased up when it noticed that there was no danger here. He started to gasp for breath. It was clear that his clothes were tainted red with blood. His countenance was ghastly pale and translucent, and his eyes were scarlet red like blood. Especially his chest. A horrifying bone-deep injury was surprisingly present there. This figure was exactly Wang Zhong who'd escaped death. However, at this moment he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. He was heavily injured, his aura was in disorder, and his entire body was covered in blood-red mud. When looked at from afar, he simply seemed like a blood-red person that had been sculpted from mud. Damn it! Damnable savior! Once this lord reclaims his true body, it'll be the moment of your death. Wang Zhong gritted his teeth while he revealed a warped and savage expression that was covered in resentment and hatred. He was truly exasperated. Earlier, he'd almost lost his life, and not that he'd escaped death. He simply hated Xianxia to the bone when he recalled everything he'd encountered earlier. After a short moment, Wang Zhong stopped gasping for breath, while his expression gradually returned to normal. He lowered his head to gaze at the injury on his chest, and he was clearly aware that it was utterly impossible to heal his wounds in a short period of time. If I was able to find my true body, then how could I have been reduced to such a miserable state? Wang Zhong seemed to have thought of something and sighed while his scarlet-red eyes were suffused with the color of recollection. He hadn't returned here for a very, very long time. All those years ago, for the sake of leaving this place to carry out his mission in the ancient god domain, he had no choice but to leave his true body here. The reason was that there was a natural barrier between the ancient god domain and the forgotten grounds of chaos, and it was the tribulation energy that restrained the Tao. Leaving and entering this place was simply as difficult as ascending the heavens. Just like when they entered the forgotten grounds of chaos. Only the joint forces of the 5 extremes of the imperial region were able to establish a passageway into the forgotten grounds of chaos. When Wang Zhong left the forgotten grounds of chaos all those years ago, he'd utilized a secret technique as well, and he'd broken down his body in order to enter the ancient god domain. But when he returned now, he noticed to his astonishment that the forgotten grounds of chaos was completely different now, and it wasn't the world that he was familiar with. Everything changes with the passage of time. This was the forgotten grounds of chaos. It was extremely chaotic and changing at all times. So, it was impossible to find the traces of the scenes he was familiar with from all those years ago. I wonder if it's right or wrong in the end. A figure like me was actually born to be a servant yet would cease to exist in death. How truly ironic. Wang Zhong sighed faintly, and it was filled with unwillingness and a sense of loss, but in next to no time Wang Zhong stopped thinking about all of this. Everything had changed, but he was sure that his true body still existed in the forgotten grounds of chaos. Swish! Suddenly, the sound of air being torn apart resounded from the depths of the baleful mist that enveloped this blood-red swamp, and it shook the surroundings. Wang Zhong's expression instantly changed, and he swiftly raised his head to look over. He saw a large blood-red bird tear through the sky and whistle over from afar. This huge bird's pupils were blood-red. Its beak was sharp like a hook, and its wings covered an area of 3 kilometers. Its entire body flowed with a blood-red glow, and it emanated a terrifying and monstrous aura of blood. Merely based on its aura alone, it was actually not inferior to an imperial monarch. A blood-core phoenix? However, a wisp of a strange smile suffused the corners of Wang Zhong's mouth when he saw the appearance of this bird clearly. Domo star. In the next moment, a wave of extremely obscure and strange sounds came from between his lips. It was completely different from the language utilized in the ancient god domain, yet it revealed a grand and solemn tone. At this moment, Wang Zhong's expression had become arrogant and domineering as well. He was like a king that looked down upon the huge blood-red bird that flashed over from afar. Squawk! The bird's figure trembled while a wisp of bewilderment arose in its blood-red eyes. It stopped in midair while it actually restrained the baleful aura it emanated. Wang Zhong's expression grew even more dignified upon noticing this, and he spoke even more swiftly in an obscure and grand language. He seemed to be giving out some sort of order. After a short moment, it actually revealed a trace of reverence and seemed to have submitted. Wang Zhong suddenly smiled when he saw this, and then he muttered, "Fortunately, these stupid things haven't forgotten their promise from all those years ago." As he spoke, his figure flashed onto the huge blood-red bird, and then he pointed towards the distance as he spoke in a low voice. Swoosh! In the next moment, The bird's wings shook, and it carried Wang Zhong along as it tore through the sky and vanished. Chen Shi, just you wait. Wang Zhong laughed coldly in his heart. 3 days later, at a vast and empty universe, Chen Shi's group of 3 that was teleporting through it seemed to have noticed something, and they simultaneously stopped and looked over towards the distance. An extremely enormous ball of chaos floated in the space extremely far away. A myriad of stars surrounded it, and they were like stars that surrounded a bright moon and were protecting their king. The ball of chaos was truly too enormous. It was suffused with an extremely heavy aura of quintessence that caused others to feel as if they'd laid eye on a small world of chaos. It floated there motionlessly yet was filled with energy and vitality. It seemed like the source of all things and the core of the universe. What's that? It's definitely the quintessence energy of this region. Chen Shi, Gu Yan, and Zhao Qingyao were shocked in their hearts. Even Aoyang, who sat on Chen Shi's oracle, couldn't help but stick her head out and curiously size everything up. So long as it's refined and absorbed, then it'll be possible to obtain region energy, charge into the imperial monarch realm, and attain the might of a region lord. Zhao Qingyao's gaze burned with desire, and it revealed yearning that came from the bottom of her heart. Region energy was a miraculous and unfathomable energy that allowed imperial monarchs to possess the might to control a region and the world within it. For example, every single one of the 1,000+ regions in the ancient god domain had a region lord of its own, and fighting such an existence was like fighting an entire region. So it was obvious how terrifying they were. Miss Zhao, there's no need to hesitate. Go refine and absorb it right now. Chen Shi noticed with a single glance that Zhao Qingyao was still hesitant when facing him. Otherwise, she would have disregarded everything, changed over and taken action. Thank you. Zhao Qingyao took a deep breath. She seemed to want to thank Chen Shi for fulfilling her wish, but in the end, all her gratitude transformed into these 2 simple words. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around with the intention of acting. However, right at this moment, Chen Shi seemed to have noticed something, and he frowned as he instantly said, "Miss Zhao, wait." Zhao Qingyao's figure stiffened while the expression in her eyes changed indeterminately. She seemed to think that Chen Shi had changed his mind. There's no need to misunderstand. Look over there first. Chen Shi pointed towards the surroundings of the quintessence, and he revealed a rare solemn expression. There's a mysterious energy around the quintessence. Once you move forward rashly, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Zhao Qingyao was stunned. She immediately realized that she'd misunderstood Chen Shi, and she couldn't help but feel ashamed in her heart, while she said in a low voice, "Thank you for the warning, fellow Taoist Chen Shi." As she spoke, she raised her eyes to look over, but she was extremely puzzled and muttered, "What energy? Why am I unable to sense it?" Yes, in Zhao Qingyao's eyes, besides a myriad of stars, there was nothing else around the enormous ball of chaos. It was even to the extent that she was unable to sense a trace of danger at all. Martial ancestral uncle. Exactly what energy is it? At this moment, Gu Yan was slightly puzzled as well because he hadn't noticed it as well. Their reactions caused Chen Shi's brows to raise, and then he came to a sudden understanding. He knew that he was only able to notice all of this by relying on the Dao Seal mark within his soul. On the other hand, if he merely utilized his senses alone, then he was similarly unable to sense the existence of that mysterious energy. Swoosh! Chen Shi didn't hesitate to flick a strand of sword chi over. It swiftly tore through space and shot explosively towards the ball of chaos. Swish! In the next moment, under the surprised gazes of Zhao Qingyao and Gu Yan, that wisp of sword chi hadn't even approached the ball of chaos when it seemed to have fallen into an unshakable pool. It caused an expanse of invisible ripples to arise, and then it vanished. At this moment, they finally saw it clearly. It turned out that an invisible and mysterious energy was really existed on the myriad of stars that resided around the ball of chaos. This energy was invisible, colorless, and indistinct, yet it existed everywhere. It seemed extremely mysterious. Moreover, their expressions changed while a strand of uncontrollable coldness arose in their hearts when they noticed it. It was like if they came into slight contact with that mysterious and invisible energy, then they would perish on the spot. What energy is that? Both of them spoke simultaneously. Xianxia frowned as well. He seemed to have the answer yet didn't dare say for sure. It's the tribulation energy that restrains the Tao. Right at this moment, Aoyang, who'd been quiet all along, spoke. It's invisible, colorless, and contains no light. Tribulation formed into restriction, and this restriction can obliterate the Tao. It perfectly fits the description in the rumors about the tribulation energy that restrains the Tao. Aoyang paused for a moment before she continued. Grandma once said that the rock Tao Lord had accidentally allowed himself to be tainted by this tribulation energy. So, even though he'd escaped the forgotten grounds of chaos in the end, he was still unable to disperse this energy and perished in the end. The tribulation energy that restrains the Tao. When he got the answer, Xianxia's eyes couldn't help but narrow while he said to himself, as expected. At this moment, Zhao Qingyao was extremely terrified. She was clearly aware that if Xianxia hadn't stopped her, then she would have probably suffered calamity by now. Who would have imagined that the quintessence of this region would actually be enveloped by this tribulation energy? It's probably slightly difficult to refine and absorb it now. Gu Yan frowned as he pondered deeply. It wasn't just difficult. It was simply dangerous to the extreme. Even a figure like the Rock Tao Lord had perished in the end from being tainted by it, so it was obvious how terrifying this mysterious energy was. On the other hand, Xianxia and the others were merely universe-enlightened ancestral gods, and they were leaps and bounds away from a figure like the Rock Tao Lord. Under such circumstances, how could anyone dare speak about refining and absorbing the quintessence of that region? What should we do? In an instant, Zhao Qingyao was at a complete loss for what to do and was extremely conflicted. A supreme fortune encounter was right before their eyes and right within their reach. However, it just so happened that extraordinary danger stood before them, and it was simply torturous. The atmosphere here was deathly silent. A supreme fortune was right before their eyes, yet they were unable to approach it at all. It was simply torturous to the extreme. Aoyang, do you have a method to deal with it? Gu Yan couldn't help but ask this question. Zhao Qingyao couldn't help but look over. Earlier, her mind was in disorder, so she'd only noticed Aoyang's existence now, and her starry eyes couldn't help but focus. The primeval micro-race? Never had she imagined that this ancient race that had gone extinct in the annals of history would actually still have living members in the world. No, Aoyang shook her head and said, if there was a method to deal with it, then the Rock Tao Lord wouldn't have suffered calamity and perished. When she heard this answer, the trace of hope that arose in Zhao Qingyao's heart had been instantly obliterated, and her face dimmed down slightly. Could it be that I'm really going to have no chance to obtain the quintessence energy of this region? Perhaps we can try probing it and searching, and we might be able to find some weak points that allow us to avoid the tribulation energy and approach the quintessence. Gu Yan pondered deeply before he spoke. All right. Zhao Qingyao thought for a moment before she decided to try, because if she were to give up just like this, then she would be bound to regret it forever. There's no need for that. Suddenly, Xianxia, who'd remained silent until now, had spoken. He focused his gaze towards the distance and said, I'd observed it earlier. The tribulation energy covers every single inch of space around it, and it's utterly impossible to find any weak points. He paused for a moment and continued. Even if we attack it, then perhaps we would be able to locate some weak points in the end. But it would absolutely exhaust too much energy and time. Once we use too much time, then it would probably draw the attention of others. His words caused Gu Yan and Zhao Qingyao to fall silent while their hearts felt heavy. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. Then what should we do? We must make the best use of our time and act. Xianxia had a solemn expression. We can't delay anymore. Act. How do we act under such circumstances? Could it be that we should risk our lives? Gu Yan and Zhao Qingyao were bewildered. Miss Zhao, prepare yourself. I'll break open the defenses of the tribulation energy in a while, and you must grab the opportunity one create. She seemed to be unwilling to explain, and he directly told them of his plan. What? Martial ancestral uncle, you intend to attack the tribulation energy? That absolutely won't do. What if that energy assaults you and you are inflicted with it? Wouldn't that mean? Guyan's expression changed slightly while he dissuaded anxiously. He wasn't willing to make Xianxia suffer any danger for Zhao Qingyao's sake. Fellow Taoist Xianxia, it's too dangerous. We should forget it. Zhao Qingyao dissuaded from the side as well. Xianxia had already saved her life. If he were to put his life on the life for her sake, then such kindness was something she couldn't endure. Don't worry. I would definitely not play around with my life. Xianxia smiled, and then his expression turned solemn while his gaze was deep and profound. Miss Zhao, be careful. OM. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when a strand of obscure and mysterious fluctuation suddenly swept out from Xianxia, and it was like a ripple that silently swept out. It was impossible to stop Xianxia, so Guyan could only watch helplessly when he saw this, and he was both anxious and nervous. No matter how he racked his brains, he was unable to figure out why his martial ancestral uncle would act in this way. Is it even worth it? Zhao Qingyao was the same. She couldn't figure it out, but she was extremely moved in her heart. At this moment, she would probably even be willing to lay down her life for Xianxia. Bang! Suddenly, a deep sound of collision resounded. They could clearly notice that an expanse of invisible energy fluctuations had suddenly arose around the enormous quintessence energy of the region, and it surged violently and rippled like raging waves. When looked at from afar, it was like an extremely swift little boat had charged into a calm lake, and it caused numerous circles of ripples to arise. The little boat was the energy Xianxia emanated, and the lake was the invisible and colorless tribulation energy that restricted the Tao. When they witnessed this scene, the hearts of both Gu Yan and Zhao Qingyao shook violently, and they felt slight disbelief. The tribulation energy was actually shaken by Xianxia. How exactly did he accomplish this? After all, even the Rock Tao Lord was helpless before such an energy all those years ago. Quickly prepare to act. Xianxia didn't give them the time to recover from their shock before he spoke in a deep voice. At this moment, his expression was solemn and serious to the extreme as well, and a wisp of strange and dazzling fluctuations had appeared in the depths of his eyes. Zhao Qingyao immediately restrained her thoughts and discarded all the distracting thoughts she possessed. And she didn't dare allow her thoughts to continue running wild. She had a resolute expression on her face as she circulated the vital energy within her entire body, and she was like a fully drawn bow that was accumulating strength while waiting to be released. Xianxia has already helped her accomplish this, so even she would be unwilling to forgive herself if she was unable to grab this opportunity. Bang! In the end, an ear-piercing sound of shattering resounded, and then a rift suddenly cracked open on the ceaselessly surging tribulation energy in the distance. The enormous ball of Chao, the quintessence energy of the region, resided at the end of the rift. Swoosh! At practically the exact same moment, Zhao Qingyao's figure flashed like a bolt of lightning, and she instantly flashed along the rift and charged over. Rumble! When the rift suddenly collapsed and completely vanished, her figure had barely charged through and vanished. If she was just a step slower, then the consequences would be unimaginable. When the tribulation energy recovered to its previous state, Xianxia heaved a long sigh of relief while a wisp of an unusual expression arose in his eyes. He muttered, "It really is as I expected." On the other hand, Gu Yan and Aoyang was stunned. He actually succeeded? Fellow Taoist Xianxia, thank you. If you need anything in the future, then I'll definitely do my best, and I won't refuse no matter what. Zhao Qingyao's voice resounded from within the ball of chaos, and it was extremely solemn and carried heartfelt gratitude. After that, the voice vanished. Xianxia and Gu Yan could clearly sense that the originally motionless ball of chaos had suddenly started to drone and circulate at this moment, and it seemed as if it had awakened from deathly silence. Obviously, Zhao Qingyao had started to refine and absorb it. He really succeeded. Gu Yan sighed incessantly with emotion, and his gaze towards Xianxia even carried a wisp of indescribable admiration. because the actions of his martial ancestral uncle had always exceeded his expectations, and everything impossible seemed to not be a problem before his martial ancestral uncle. "Young master, how did you accomplish it?" Aoyang couldn't help but ask curiously. Meanwhile, Xianxia grinned and said, "I possess a type of energy that just happens to be able to go against this tribulation energy." She was speaking about the Dao seal mark within his soul. It came from within the river diagram fragments. In the past, She was merely aware that it could conceal his aura, capture the fluctuations of his enemy's voice transmissions, and even see through all the methods of concealment possessed by his opponents. Yet now, after this probe, she noticed once more that the miraculous effects of the Dao seal mark was absolutely not so simple. At the very least, it was actually capable of revealing inconceivable effects when dealing with the tribulation energy that restrains the Dao. This had even taken Shi by surprise, and it was definitely an unexpected discovery and a pleasant surprise. It even allowed him to feel even more certain that if he encountered this tribulation energy in the future, then he could at least guarantee his own safety. When they heard Shi, the hearts of both Gu Yan and Aoyang couldn't help but shake. An energy that can go against this tribulation energy. Isn't that a little too inconceivable? After all, the Rock Dao Lord was extraordinarily formidable all those years ago, yet he was still unable to resist this tribulation energy. But Shi could. How could this not surprise them? Fantastic! If we encounter such a situation in the future, then wouldn't be helpless like we were just now. Aoyang spoke with delight. Gu Yan nodded endlessly as well, and he deeply agreed. He was even able to imagine that even if Shi was trapped within the forgotten grounds of chaos without anyone to help him from the outside, he would be able to leave by relying on this ability. Now, Miss Zhao is completely safe. Even if others arrive here and intend to seize the quintessence, it's entirely impossible. She stared towards the distance and observed for a while before he determined that one didn't have to worry about being disturbed while refining and absorbing the quintessence of a region. Because the surroundings of the quintessence weren't just densely covered by tribulation energy. When Zhao Qingyao started to refine and absorb it, it had allowed her to start grasping the energy of this region and gradually become the owner of this region. Under such circumstances, how could anyone disturb her? She was even certain that once Zhao Qingyao completely refined and absorbed this supreme fortuitous encounter of hers, she would definitely step foot into the imperial monarch realm and become a true region lord. All right, let's leave. She took a deep breath, turned around, and left. He couldn't be said to feel much envy when facing this fortuitous encounter that Zhao Qingyao obtained. Conversely, this event allowed him to obtain a complete understanding of what the quintessence of a region was, how one should refine and absorb it, and what one might encounter during that process. All of this was extremely beneficial towards their next move after this. Not to mention that he'd made friends with Zhao Qingyao this time, and it could be considered to be worth it. It was even to the extent that one could say that Zhao Qingyao would definitely not stand by idly if Shi encountered any trouble in the future. Gu Yan didn't say anything about all of this. Even though he was rather envious of Zhao Qingyao, he was even more clearly aware that this was his martial ancestral uncle's decision, so it would definitely not be wrong. Swoosh! In next to no time, the three of them left this area and returned to the ground of the forgotten grounds of chaos, and they started to continue searching for regions that had taken form. At practically the exact same time, Lung Xinghuan and Donghuang Inchuan's groups had appeared at a universe. Shockingly, the quintessence of a region floated around 30K in front of them. Don't worry, Brother Lung. Even though we're unable to resist the tribulation energy, but we are able to avoid it. Although it's only for a few breaths of time, it's still sufficient for us to charge into the quintessence of that region. After a long period of silence, Donghuang Inxian smiled lightly and spoke with confidence. Since it's like that, then we'll be leaving first. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, then contact us with the method we agreed upon earlier. Lung Xinghuan's expression was indifferent, and he spoke casually before leading away the group from the sovereign sect. Fortunately, this fellow didn't disregard his principles in the face of fortune. Donghuang Inxian seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief in his heart when he saw Lung Xinghuan's group leave. After that, his gaze shot towards the quintessence in the distance, and a wisp of anticipation that was impossible to conceal had surged into appearance within his heart.